Alright, so here is a batch review video of every film that I saw this year at Sundance 2022. So I have everything listed right here. We got about we have 9 movies that I've seen this year. I'm just gonna go down the list of everything I saw, give you guys my thoughts, kind of give you a heads up and let you see what you need to look out for that's gonna be coming out hopefully soon. If not this year, at least next year. A lot of these films are sort of sporadically spread out, so they could be coming out later this year or even in a couple months or maybe next year. Some of these films get put off for quite some time. So if you don't see a release date or you can't find a release date anywhere, just know you're a part of the club, because a lot of press members also, we don't know when these films are going to come out as well. We just kind of have to keep an eye out for a trailer or just consistently do searches on Google. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so starting with the first movie, because these are all actually in the order in which I saw these films. So starting with number 1, Emergency, directed by Carey Williams. Ready for a night of legendary party hopping, 3 college students must weigh the pros and cons of calling the police when faced with an unexpected situation. So just right off the bat, I absolutely loved Emergency. I thought the film was really good. Very funny, very true and heartfelt. There's just a lot of real conversations throughout this film and just a ton of eye-opening moments for those who can't really relate and even those who can. So the situation that these kids are dealing with in this movie is sort of a very simple situation to deal with, but it depends on your way of thinking, and you have to consider what's been going on in the world previously and currently and the race of these kids, and that situation can become very complicated very quickly, and that's the route that this film explores. Now, I've been paying close attention to RJ Cyler, and he appeared in the Power Rangers reboot. He was recently in The Harder They Fall. He's done a few projects here and there, but in this film, this guy has a star performance. He is so funny. He's always pretty funny in his roles, and he's always, playing the funny black guy, but it's also because it fits him so much. He's really good at it, and he's just a good actor in general. But I must say that the star performance comes from the lead played by Donald Else Watkins throughout this movie. His performance was amazing, and this might be hands down my favorite comedy from Sundance. But yeah, I would definitely say look forward to checking out Emergency. So next up we have Speak No Evil, directed by Christian Tafdrop. So a Danish family visits a Dutch family after meeting each other on a holiday trip. And the weekend that they spend together turns into something that feels like it could possibly be from the Funny Games universe. And that was my own synopsis of this film, because this family goes to hang out with this other family after they met on a holiday, and things just get really weird. It gets really violent and somewhat brutal, and just, it's a strange situation. So Speak No Evil was just such a weirdly twisted film that takes great pride in making the audience feel repugnance and discomfort. I must say, overall, the film is quite a ride. It veers away quite often from what a viewer would want to happen. Literally everything that you think should happen in this film is exactly what doesn't happen. Basically, as these two families spend the weekend together, things just progressively just keep getting worse between them. And all of this leads to some very horrifying events occurring much later in the film. But if I'm being completely honest, for me personally, I have to say that the movie was lacking quite a bit in a few different areas. But at the same time, the movie was also oddly satisfying in a way. So I would say for anyone that loves weirdly ambiguous horror films, that this would be right down your alley. But if you're looking for something that gives you a lot of answers, doesn't really leave you hanging very much, and it doesn't give you something very random to just sort of go with, then you're not going to really enjoy Speak No Evil very much. But if you enjoy the ambiguity that some horror films can provide, Speak No Evil might be that film for you. So next up we have After Yang, directed by Kaganada. So when his young daughter's beloved companion, an android named Yang, malfunctions, Jake, played by Colin Farrell, searches for a way to repair him, and he slowly begins to discover that this android kind of had a life of its own before it malfunctioned or died. This is a movie that explores grieving and what it means to be a human, or rather, what makes your existence important to you. So this character Yang in the film is an android, and he's only seen as an android by the families in this film, the adults, but this little girl, who actually is supposed to be like his sister to a certain extent, and Yang sort of is like her big brother, she sees Yang as a lot more. She just doesn't see him as a machine. And this is partially because she's a child, but also the film takes Yang's existence much more seriously as well. And that's where the movie starts to sort of take a deep dive into the life that Yang had outside of his family. After Yang is a slow burn, but at the same time, it's very heartfelt. You know, it could be seen from many different perspectives. And like I said before, the film does explore that, but it's a movie that could also be enjoyed by anyone. Anyone could watch this movie and really take something from it. So because it's slow, it's an A24 title, so it does sort of follow that A24 blueprint for the most part. I would definitely say it's enjoyable. It's a slow movie, but it's good. All right, so next up we have Duel, directed by Riley Stearns. So this is a satirical science fiction thriller that tells the story of a woman who is trying to destroy a clone of herself. So I really didn't know what to expect going into Duel. I mean, it looked like a fun movie. I saw satirical, I saw Karen Gillian, and I saw Aaron Paul, and I was like, this could be interesting. And turns out I was right. The comedic elements mixed with the lack of emotions throughout this movie is just very ridiculous sometimes. I mean, Sarah has a clone of herself that she needs to kill, but she also starts self-reflecting a lot throughout the movie because this clone makes her rethink who she is, because the clone is technically a better version of her in every way, and it makes her improve in her own life. So basically, because this clone now exists, it makes her a better person. I mean, just the overall execution and delivery of this movie was really good, and it was funny. It was very funny. I was surprised at how funny it was. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Duel once it releases. Next up, we have Resurrection, directed by Andrew Siemens. So Resurrection follows Margaret, played by Rebecca Hall, a woman who seems to have her life in order. I mean, she's capable, she's disciplined, and she is successful. And everything seems to be, you know, like she's got everything under control. That is until David returns, carrying with him the horrors of Margaret's past. So Resurrection was the most insane, bizarre, but also the most astonishing psychological thriller that I saw from Sundance this year. So I don't think I could have ever in a million years guessed where this movie was going or what to expect from this movie. In a million years, you could have never guessed it. No one will ever be able to guess what Resurrection is truly about. But I will say that this movie was, like I said, it was just the most bizarre thing from Sundance this year. So if I had to go ahead and throw it out there right now, anyone who saw The Night House and really enjoyed it, this movie sort of takes a very deep psychological dive like that film did. Now, I will say that The Night House was definitely way more fleshed out in its psychological areas of ambiguity to a certain extent, but this film is even much more ambiguous. And for that reason, I don't know if people will really enjoy it that much, but I truly loved it. Now, once this character David shows up, played by Tim Roth, who gives an amazing performance, also alongside Rebecca Hall, who's always giving an amazing performance. Once these two start to reveal what this dark secret is from their past, it flips the whole fucking movie on its head. And it gets really strange, it gets really weird, but I thought it was very fun and wild and mysterious. I don't know, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, but there will be a lot of people who won't, because there's not enough details, there's not enough information, and it's a very ambiguous movie. But personally, I was okay with that. But I would say if you enjoyed what I described, I would say check it out, give it a try. So next up we have You Won't Be Alone, directed by Goran Stilevsky. I hope I pronounced that correctly, sorry in advance. But in 19th century Macedonia, a young woman is kidnapped and then transformed into a witch by an ancient spirit. Curious about life as a human, the witch accidentally kills a peasant in a nearby village and then takes her victim's shape to live life in her skin. This movie is really just another one that drags through the story in my opinion, and there's just a lot of marinating cinematography, which technically really isn't a bad thing, but it says a lot without saying much at all, which actually is a really good thing. Visual narrative is, you know, that's a huge skill to acquire as a director and a cinematographer. But this was probably the most immersive film from Sundance, and I think I'm going to stick with that terminology. It was very immersive. Once she starts, you know, transforming into these creatures, you really start to see life from their perspective, and they shoot the film in a really cool way that shows you that, you know, it really comes across else on screen. This is a foreign film and it is subtitled, and I only speak English. And for me personally, I was still able to get the gist of it without really being able to know what the characters are saying. I mean, of course I'm reading the subtitles, but for me personally, I feel like that could take away the experience sometimes when I'm watching a film and I'm trying to, watch what's going on and also follow the subtitles. I've said this before in previous videos, but with this film, I really didn't feel that at all, really. I mean, the visual narrative throughout this movie is really impeccable, honestly. I mean, following this witch as she transforms to other living beings, including animals, and seeing her discover and live life through other individuals, and that's her way of learning, is pretty badass. I mean, it's a really cool story, and the way that they tell it is really cool. So yeah, You Won't Be Alone is a really good film. Next up, we have Something in the Dirt, directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. So when neighbors John and Levi witness supernatural events in their Los Angeles apartment building, they actually realize that documenting this paranormal event could possibly inject some fame and fortune into their wasted lives. So Something in the Dirt is actually from the creators of Spring Synchronic Resolution, which is one of my favorites, and they've done a few other movies. I mean, they're known as, the guys who direct movies who have a very twisted mind. They make very strange and weird and eccentric type of films, and I usually am fairly into whatever they put out for the most part, but when it comes to Something in the Dirt, I wasn't really enjoying this one too much. It's still very intriguing though, like most of their titles. But the two main characters creating a documentary about possible supernatural events that occurred in their apartment starts to sort of wear off pretty quick. I mean, it is an okay film for what it is, but I personally don't think that the film is as interesting as the film thinks it is, if that makes sense. So yeah, but even with that said, I would still think that it's worth a watch just to check out, just to see what it's about. And if you follow these two filmmakers, I would say that it's worth adding to your archive, but for me, it wasn't that great of a film. So next up, we have Emily the Criminal, directed by John Patton Ford. Down on her luck and swamped in debt, Emily gets involved in a credit card scam that pulls her into the criminal underworld of LA, and ultimately leading to some deadly consequences. So I must admit, it was actually very entertaining seeing Aubrey Plaza in such a different, serious type of role this time around. I mean, the role really fits her, and I personally wouldn't be that surprised if it came out later that they actually wrote this movie with her in mind to play the main character Emily, because she really killed it. I mean, it was suspenseful, it was thrilling, it was funny. I mean, Aubrey Plaza, she's known for being funny, and it has that funniness to it, that humor. But at the same time, it also has a bit of charm to the film as well. It's somewhat of a charming movie, which is a weird terminology to use about this movie, but it is kind of charming. I mean, don't get me wrong though, this film has a lot of fucked up aspects about it as well. There's a lot of dirtiness, there's a lot of messed up moments that occur, and a lot of dog eat dog type of situations throughout this film. But I would say Aubrey Plaza really killed it, and I would definitely say I really enjoyed her performance in it. Watching this character Emily just sort of get really tired and frustrated with the corporate world, like a lot of us that work in the corporate world. She gets tired of it. She gets tired of the corporate BS, and she wants to go and sort of find a fast lane and, an outside way of finding a come up. And she finds that, but she also finds out that that has its difficulties as well. So it's a very fascinating role for her, and I had a good time with this movie. All right, and last but not least, we have Nanny, directed by Nakiatu Jusu. I'm sorry if I butchered that, my apologies. So Nanny follows Aisha, who is an undocumented nanny working for a privileged couple in New York City. As she awaits the arrival of her son, who she left behind in Senegal, she finds herself haunted by a supernatural presence. As far as films from Sundance this year that had very huge surprises, I mean movies that just really bloomed in the end, Nanny is definitely number one on my list out of the films that I saw. The film starts out a lot slower, a whole lot slower than I would have preferred. I mean, it could be considered a slow burn, honestly, to a certain extent. And also, if I'm being honest, there wasn't enough interesting events throughout this movie to keep me completely on board 100% throughout the whole film. But once it hits the last half of this movie, it really picks up and it has a very strong conclusion. And witnessing the main character Aisha have an otherworldly experience or lose her mind, I'll just leave it right there so you guys can watch the film later and figure out which one is actually happening to her. But this is a slow, intriguing experience to sit through and ponder on. And this was probably the best horror film from Sundance this year, in my opinion. This film caused a lot of buzz from Sundance this year. A lot of the online tickets were sold out. It was also an award-winning film from Sundance this year. I mean, so yeah, this movie is definitely one to look out for. There is a reason for that. If you're a horror lover, I would definitely say please check out Nanny. So yeah, that was every film that I saw this year from Sundance 2022. I would definitely say that I had a lot better luck this time around than I did last year at Sundance. A lot of the films that I watched weren't really up to par. I didn't really enjoy the majority of them. But this time around, I would definitely say that my luck was a lot better with the films from Sundance 2022. I enjoyed the majority of movies that I got to see. So yeah, but there you have it. And if you enjoyed the content, you know what to do. Thank you for watching.